Topic today kind of was interesting for me to kind of read up a little bit about it.
But tell me a little bit about you. What kind of food do you have? What are you fond of?
So, okay, so I mean, we'll get back to casting food, but I mean, I'm basically, I was born in Amritsar, which means, I mean, there's Punjabi food flowing in my blood. But I'm married to a Parsi whose mother only cooks South Indian food. So, I mean, we have, and like my mother used to basically, was Punjabi, but only baked cakes and Chinese. So, I mean, I think that I'm very fortunate that I've come from a very eclectic culinary background, from Punjabi all the way to thing. Like Dawat-e-Ishq or Chini Kam, the restaurant and the cuisine plays an integral part of the film. So, like anything in film, you have to do that kind of research. If you look at the Italian food in Godfather, I mean, Godfather is a film which is not about food.
Absolutely.
But that world becomes so alive and authentic. You know, just when you look at the dinners they're eating or the feasts that are there. And I think that is something that really lacks. And now, in that sense, you don't really, everything doesn't really need that much research. But just to make it authentic, like to make it look like there's a New York Italian family, food plays such a major part. You're trying to change the way people think. And that kind of research is done to the T. It's almost scientific. So that much research you do when you actually put your character down. Like when I'm writing characters, one of the things, like this is even before you've written your script, one of the things I always write is, what do they eat? Baar Baar Dekho, which was kind of set in the future. We spoke for days on end in figuring out, because there was one scene that happens, it's a funeral that takes place in 2046. And I think we must have spent a week on just talking about what is going to be, and there was no scene where someone's eating, but it was going to be there because they all come home and they're kind of actually celebrating their mother's life. So obviously there's food. And you know, everyone started debating what is food going to be in 2046. And we went into a lot of research on that level, and separate
That's
story.
Interesting. So how did you research something like that? Was it just discussion or?
I mean, you always start with a discussion. We have like art directors, and you know, you kind of research. I mean, they did a lot of research about modern chefs in the culinary world that were working with. So I was very obsessed, actually. My brief was weird because I just told them, I said, I'm really obsessed with shapes.
Okay.
And I would like, because the thing is that the food is just going to be passed around, it's going to be lying there, and I think it'll be very attractive if you can just see it. So I would like to experiment. I think that it would help us in 1 second, because in screen time, you don't get much time. Like here I'm sitting, I have half an hour, I'm explaining people what I'm saying. But in film, you don't get that time. So it's like your eye has to catch it immediately. So I was very particular about shapes. And I said, and then we started talking about what would the texture be like. So we didn't really get into like, are they eating rice or are they, we were just creating something very, very fictitious to make it look like food in the future. And then they got back to me with.
But would you say researching the portion where we go into future in your movie, Baar Baar Dekho, is it easy to research and come up with ideas about, say, automobiles or the way they would live in comparison to
Any
food
day.
they would eat?
Any day. I don't think people research food. I really don't think that people research food. I think today people are researching food purely in terms of what they want to eat on their table, because they believe that there's a lot of unhealthy stuff out there. And I feel like at least people here are aware, but otherwise, you have a huge art department that is in charge of actually bringing the food on set. Like, you know, I mean, this. And it is pretty much their job. And I think I can't tell you on how they research it. Because I think you're just constantly trying to create a world that doesn't exist and yet make it look real. And I think that food, if filmmakers started using food a lot more, it would help you authenticate your characters. It would make them real, because people always eat. Like, I felt very bad because in my film, in my second film, Baar Baar Dekho, I couldn't find scenes like besides them sitting at a restaurant, and I
Yeah.
don't particularly like shooting scenes at restaurants, I couldn't find a place to really put in somewhere where they were eating.
Right.
And then finally, I found this actor, Ram Kapoor, who's playing Katrina's father in my film. And I begged him. I said, listen, I would really like you, because he's meant to be playing a gregarious Punjabi man.
Yeah.
And I said, will you please eat breakfast while you're sitting on the breakfast table? The problem is that we'll end up doing 10 to 15 takes. So they have to keep eating, like they'll have to eat 10 to 15 eggs for each shot. So he was like, no, please don't do this to me, I'll throw up. And I said, I just wanted to look authentic, because if you're this fat, man who's sitting at breakfast, you're hungry. People at breakfast are very hungry. So please do this. And I remember we did 8 takes and he ate,
Oh
I mean,
God, how many
almost close to
eggs?
10 eggs. So,
Was he
yeah.
throwing up after that?
No, I mean, I think he did go. He did go somewhere. But so food is actually very tricky in films. A lot of actors, like, it's the same thing as smoking. If you give an actor a cigarette to do one scene, you have to do 20 takes,
Right.
and that person has to smoke that much. So anything physical that they're doing becomes very difficult. And a lot of actors just outright tell you that I'm not going to eat. If you do a dinner table of 10 actors, they'll always say that, listen, I'll be the character that's on a diet, or I'm the character, because none of them, I've not yet met an actor that enjoys eating while performing.
Really?
Yeah, because it comes in the way. But I think things are changing. I think these are things that were there in Hindi films for a while, and now
But earlier,
filmmakers have become
remember
quite
the
strict.
movies when Nirupa Roy would lovingly feed her, whoever,
Yeah, but
son,
then, they
daughters.
never, like the other films that you were mentioning, they never savored it. There was just never a scene of someone just enjoying a meal at home, or that was more about the mamta, ma wanting
Yeah,
to feed.
yeah.
It was on an emotional level, But I don't think that the
But I think certain research, or is it just that they are very clued into trends that one sees in movies? Like, for example, there's this sudden rise in wine drinking.
yeah.
And you see that in movies. It wasn't there earlier. It never used to be there, in fact. And off late you see that there is this whole thing about, whenever they're going out, they're going, whether it's a heroine or the hero or whoever, they're just having a glass of wine, enjoying themselves, or maybe discussing it over a glass of wine.
I think
So-
that's because, I mean, probably you're talking about contemporary films.
Yes, I'm comparing them to the previous one, and I'm saying that maybe they don't research, but they're quite clued in the film industry as to what
I
the
think-
trend is going on.
Yeah, because like if you're making contemporary cinema, your characters are today's characters.
Right.
And like if as a director, my characters are going to a restaurant, it's pretty much discussed in advance what they'll be drinking, what they'll be eating. It also all this goes into design as well. So if I write in my film that 2 characters are going to a restaurant, I have to specify what kind of cuisine it's going to be, the way I'd like that restaurant to look, whether there will be alcohol, whether I think that these characters one character, like I told you, when I write my characters, I write like
Yeah,
what is the
what that
midnight.
person would do.
So I would think that, okay, my, Katrina's character would be wine drinking and Siddharth's character would be not drinking
Not
anything.
drinking.
So you have to make those choices, and I think that comes from your writing. But it all has to seamlessly blend in, because we're creating a restaurant,
Right.
we're giving it a cuisine, we're deciding its menu, and this happens overnight. So even though people have done their research, but it comes from the space of what is needed for the scene.
Okay.
Like sometimes, like for the scene, I need an outdoor restaurant.
Right.
Now, what can be an outdoor restaurant? So, I mean, it just comes from design as well.
Okay.
So it's quite interesting, actually. It is interesting. It's just that it gets difficult to get characters to eat, and I know that's worldwide. Like
That's a very interesting thing that you're saying, actually, because for lay people who are just watching movie, we don't know what all goes behind it, in that manner.
yeah, the film
So
world is
it's
a
interesting.
very interesting world. Yes, and I take it for granted because I've been doing it for 10 years. but I don't realize how people outside, like, actually what they watch is everything that we've created, and it kind of, we try and make it look real.
And people believe that, right? They
I
do.
hope so. At the end of the day, it's I mean, if your characters are contemporary, then, you know, I mean, a director like me, I'm going to answer all those questions to my art director, because being a director is only about answering questions. Like, when you talk about research, they do so much research, and then they come to you and they've kind of put it all down and said, what do you want it to look like? We have this option, this option, this option. So it's very filmmaking is very detailed.
Right.
It's very detailed. So that one chocolate that needs to be on the table, which maybe no one eats, they will show it to you.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I'm a director. I want to know everything that's going to lie on the table.
Okay.
Like, I will never okay a table or a background that has a plastic bottle on it.
Okay.
It's just against my aesthetic. I don't like plastic. It won't make it into my film. So even if I had to do chocolates, I need them to look a certain way. I don't like the regular, you know, the bars with those silver wrappers and stuff. I like chocolates that have nice looking. And I don't even eat chocolate. But I know the look of it. I know what it should look like and what the kind of effect that I want from it. In Baar Baar Dekho, I was doing a mehendi song, and I was insisting that obviously a mehendi in Punjab, in North India, has chaat and has all that, and I just wanted everyone to eat golgappas, and it became such a nightmare for production to be able to get so many, because I wanted everyone to constantly eat that.
Okay.
And our actors, we couldn't organize Bisleri water, kapani for it, so it just became a nightmare. But the few shots that I got of it made my mehendi actually look way more authentic than just a song and dance happening in some farm. So, you know, it kind of tied in, like, there were people that were doing mehendi, there was a, you know, the kind of food that they were eating.
Right.
It just made it come together a lot more.
Now,
For advertising and for fancier things, food styling is important. For film things, it's just to make it look authentic, so that you believe that it's the mum that's cooking it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the session. It was lovely talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you.